Hey, welcome to the Enlightened Strike, a podcast where we talk about flesh and blood for just 10 minutes. My name's Daniel, and this is episode number 8. Red Deck wins? A couple weeks ago, I asked myself the question, what would a Red Deck wins strategy look like in Flesh and Blood? We obviously have the general archetypes of aggro, mid-range, and control that everything that exists can fall under, but I wanted to think about it in like the most extreme, almost meme-like sense. What is Red Deck wins in Magic? This comes from the Magic the Gathering wiki, so it's very official. Red Deck wins is generally used to refer to a red deck, which is a color in Magic. It uses small and cheap creatures on early turns to quickly diminish the opponent's life total. If creatures aren't enough, burn spells are used to finish the opponent off, so like direct damage. In this strategy, you want the game to be over before your opponent has a chance to enact their game plan at all. So I wanted to see if I could translate that over to Flesh and Blood in some way. And listen, I'll be the first to admit that this might be a dumb idea, but it sounded fun. Obviously, there's not a one-for-one translation between Magic and Flesh and Blood, but I wanted to take the spirit of Red Deck wins and apply some restrictions to how I built the deck. Restriction the first. Every card in this deck needs to cost 0 to play. I don't want to mess around with pitching to play cards. They're just going to hit the board when I need them to. Restriction the second. Every card in this deck is going to be a common or a rare. We're going to do it on a hyper budget. Does it sound even dumber than it did before? Let's take a look at the deck and you can decide. So I'm pulling up the lovely website fabdb.net, a nice resource for deck building, etc. And I'll put the deck in the show notes also on the YouTube video so you can see it. I'm just going to talk through some stuff. I'm not going to go in hyper detail. So this is a Blitz deck. Maybe I'll try this in Classic Constructed as well, but let's start off with the smaller version, and that's Blitz. Also helps because our hero can be Ira Crimson Haze. Ira's ability to pump up her second attack +1 fits right into our strategy. And our weapons are going to be the Harmonized Kodachis, as you might imagine. Our equipment, though, it can only be common or rare, is going to be the basic helmet and plate, just block for 1, the iron rot stuff. The bracers of belief we're going to have on our arms, because our pitch values are only ever 1 guaranteed, that's going to be +2 every single time, no matter what card we reveal. And we don't care about blocking, so on our feet are the almighty Snapdragon Scalers. They're going to give any attack action we might have go again, which is going to be very important. So the deck is made up of 24 attack actions. Anytime there is a whiff of go again, I put it in the deck. So you've got your Head Jabs, your Ravenous Rabble, Scar for Scar, also the Soul Bead Strike Crane Dance combo. But then, the dark horses of this deck, the cards that I thought about like when playing limited, but haven't really considered for deck building before, are these cards that when played from Arsenal get go again, and they also have other tasty effects. The one I want to mention in particular is Promise of Plenty. It's a 3 attack card. When it hits, each hero who doesn't have a card in their arsenal puts the top card of their deck face down into their arsenal. And as I said, if it's played from Arsenal, it gets go again. So this card is going to be one that your opponent, in most cases, probably wants to block because you're going to get more gas off the top, generally speaking, because you've got 24 attack actions. Next up, we have 6 defense reactions. So in general, we don't want to be blocking because we want to use all the cards in our hand. But Sink Below and Fate Foreseen, where you're packing 2 of each of those, they can help us set up later turns if we kind of have a non-ideal hand. And then Flick Flack, where you're taking 2 of as well, because sometimes you just need to block. And then the last chunk are the non-attack actions. There's 10 of those. And if the attack action cards are the bread of this deck, the non-attack actions are the butter. All of these cards, with the exception of one, are going to buff up our attack actions, usually by +3. The other is going to be Lead the Charge, which is going to give us Go Again when we can't provide it naturally. This deck is almost about creating the peasant's version of the Enlightened Strike. My first draft of this deck, I had almost a 50-50 split between non-attack actions and attack actions, and I just found there were too many turns where my hand was filled with non-attack actions and I couldn't actually do anything. So I feel like 10 is a pretty decent spot for those. So to review, the overall thesis of the deck is kind of the fundamental of Flesh and Blood. Just pressure the heck out of your opponent, force them to have a bad turn, and just do it over and over and over again. And just don't block if you can. Use those equipments. Your life is a resource that you do not care about until it says 1, maybe 2. So how did the deck do in the wild? I ended up taking it to a weekly event at my LGS. It was Blitz, obviously. 4 rounds, and I went 2-2. All of those games were obscenely close. We were both down to 1 life, my opponents and I, every single game, which again speaks to the balance of Flesh and Blood. This jank budget aggro deck that I put together, face down Dash, Bolton, Cavden, and Kasai. I lost to the Dash after they went out of control with resources from their little gizmos and gadgets. I was able to take down Bolton even after a 4-swing saber turn. It was just disgusting. Cavden I took down in what kind of ended up being a mirror match. They had a lot of 0-cost cards in their deck, and also Promise of Plenty with Memorial Ground, which allowed them to decide what was going to go in their arsenal from their graveyard, which was pretty sweet. Pretty good move there. I might consider it for this deck. And then Kasai. That was a really beautiful match. Really close back and forth. But after all that pressure, it came down to those dang Valiant Dynamos getting armor back. What a sweet little card. So overall, I had a lot of fun with the deck, but also I was surprised at how much pressure it was able to lay down in a real environment and how much she was able to stand on her own. So I'm really looking forward to experimenting more with this 0-cost red deck wins idea, in particular in the commoner format, using just common stuff, which is going to be even much harder, but also upgrading it with some E-strikes and whatever else. And maybe taking it up to Classic Constructed with a different hero, we'll see. But I would say that the first experiment was a success. Does red deck win in Fab? It can. I would love to see your jank or budget lists that you found some success with out there. I feel like this kind of idea might be a good tool to have a nice on-road for like incoming Magic players or people that don't want to spend hardly any money. I did do a total on how much this would cost on TCG Player as of today, and the grand total would be $33.53, and half of that is the shipping cost. And really, you could get most, if not all of these cards from other players locally because they're so common. But that's all for today. I'm going to be gone for a couple weeks on a brief vacation from the world, so I will see you when Tales of Aria comes out. Farewell. If you want to reach out, you can find us on Twitter and Gmail at eStrikeCast.